I'm glad that you're back to 0 to 60 motoring once again, and today I actually have an interesting car here. This is the Toyota Succeed. It's a refined version of the Toyota Probox. The Toyota Probox or Succeed needs no introduction because this car is literally anywhere in the country. From Mombasa to Kisumu, you're going to find the Toyota Probox or Succeed. It's mostly used as a van to haul let me say luggage, farm produce, sometimes as a van to carry people. So it's a car that has received, let me say, a very good acceptability when I'm looking at the Kenyan market. So today we're going to analyze this car, check what is under the hood, and tell why this car is popular and what is its winning formula. So if you are new to 0 to 60 motoring, we normally do car videos like this one, so please subscribe to this channel. That is how you'll help this channel grow. Let's get straight into this review. So coming to this generation, this is actually the second generation Toyota Probox. There are changes, few tweaks here and there on how this Toyota Succeed or Probox looks like, because carrying on from the other generation, you can tell that this bonnet here is actually different. You now have a, let me say, a Toyota logo here. The grille here is actually different from what the previous generation used to have, and then let me say they wanted to tweak it a little bit to improve on the looks, but still it's not there. It's not a car that you'll buy and say maybe you have the best looking car out there. It's basically a few tweaks here and there to improve on the aesthetics, of course, but it's not something that is that big actually. When I'm looking at this car, it is a hardy product. This is not an off-roader, but the Toyota Probox actually will survive even the most harshest roads out there, because this car, you're going to find it in up country. You find it has been abused or molested, like 15 people inside it with some luggage on the roof. But the body integrity of the Toyota Probox is actually one of the best when I'm looking at vans out there. So that's why you will find it up country roads are not that good, but it's still surviving those roads, even with the amount of abuse it is exposed to. I started by saying this is a Toyota Succeed and it's a refined version of the Toyota Probox. Now, apart from the other visual changes inside on how it looks like, actually the main difference between a Toyota Probox and a Toyota Succeed is that the Succeed mostly it used to come with a 1.5 liter 1NZFE, and that's what I have here. In the Toyota Probox, most of them normally come with a 1300cc. Previously it was called the 2NZ, but nowadays they switched to something we normally call the 1NR engine. So this Toyota Succeed is actually offered with this 1500cc natural aspirated petrol engine, normally called the 1NZFE. This is actually a very, let me say, ubiquitous engine because it's applied in many cars like the Toyota Corolla Fielder, the Toyota Corolla Axio, some versions the F variant of the Toyota Premio, and even the Allion A15. If you've been into cars for long, you know the 1NZFE is actually one of the most reliable engines ever built by Toyota actually. That's why when I'm looking at a Toyota Succeed with a 1NZFE engine, I'm pretty sure this engine will serve you without any problem. It's actually one of the best engines out there when I'm looking at reliability. This 1.5 1NZFE is married to a CVT gearbox which sends drive to the front wheels. The previous generation of the Toyota Succeed or the Toyota Probox used to have a 4-speed automatic transmission, but then because CVT is nowadays the norm because of fuel economy, Toyota changed the transmission from a conventional automatic to a CVT. Now that will actually have an impact on how the strength of this car looks like when I'm looking at the gearbox strength, because the previous generation Toyota Probox used to be so reliable that it could receive an amount of abuse without necessarily breaking down. Now, this one, of course, I have not registered many complaints with it, but the strength of a CVT gearbox cannot in any way be compared to a conventional automatic. That is like a 4-speed automatic transmission. So that is what may actually come out as the weak link for this new shape Toyota Probox compared to the former, the first generation Toyota Probox or Succeed. So reliability of this 1NZFE plus the CVT gearbox, of course it's not on the negative side, but then it's not as strong of course as a conventional automatic. And when you're getting a Toyota Succeed instead of a Toyota Probox, of course you're going to get more power because the Probox will be having a 1.3 liter while these others are 1.5 liter. So that is something actually you should take into consideration. Now, because we've talked about the engine and the reliability, most probably you're interested in knowing how is the fuel economy of this car, because someone who's into business, most probably fuel consumption is a big priority. Now, when this car is loaded legally, I mean 5 passengers and some luggage on the boot, this one NZFE should be able to give you like 14 kilometers per liter. But because most of these cars are not loaded legally, most probably you'll find some people stacked up in the boot, 3 people on the front and like 5 people in the middle seat, and of course some load on the roof. The 1.5 here actually consumption, of course, because the load is on the higher side, will actually drop. It drops to something like 12 kilometers per liter. So that is why when a car is loaded legally, it consumes, of course, better than when it's overloaded. But if you're getting the Toyota Probox with the 1.3 liter 1NR engine, you're going to get better fuel figures. That engine can actually give you 16 to 16.5 kilometers per liter, of course, when driven sensibly and loaded legally. The Toyota Probox actually or succeed in most variants. It comes with a 2-wheel drive, that is a front wheel drive, but there is also an option of getting a 4-wheel drive. Now the downside of getting a 4-wheel drive over this 2-wheel drive is, in most cases, it will consume slightly more. But then I think a 4-wheel drive is actually better than a 2-wheel drive, because if you are living in a country where the roads are not that good, when you have a 4-wheel drive car, you have a better traction actually. That's why I'll say that it's good going for a 4-wheel drive. That is if you can find it. But of course there is a myth or a misconception out there that a 4-wheel drive Probox is bad, it consumes way excess, but then it's slightly more. Matters are aesthetics, that is the interior crafting of the Toyota Probox. Of course, it should not be a priority whatsoever, because the interior actually here is basic and let me say, one of the worst you will ever see out there. That is how this car is built to be. Of course, when it's a delivery van or it's a business van, you don't expect it any bells and whistles. Basically, the features I'm seeing here is that you have, let me say, even the radio here, of course, has been plugged out, but then there is normally like a 4.5 inch screen here. You have something like a traction control. The electronics in this car actually not that many, and because this is actually the Toyota Succeed, in most cases comes with electric windows, but I'm surprised this one actually has only one for the driver. The co-driver on the other side, actually the window here is actually manually adjusted, just like the traditional ones, and actually that also applies even for the second row seats. So it is actually, let me say, a basic car, of course, that is meant to serve only its function. There is no luxury whatsoever when it comes to the Toyota Probox. The second row seat of this Toyota Probox is actually, it's not a good place to be, especially over long distances, because it feels like actually a very hard bench, which is not that comfortable. But if you are into business, of course, people are not going to spend a lot of time here. They are just going to be here for short distances, and then they are light. So it is actually a deal breaker if you want something comfortable. But for someone who's into business, it's not bad, because actually I think the bench-like shape of this seat makes it easy for you to lower it down, so that you can have a good boot space. And let's see how the boot looks like. When all the seats are in position, you can see actually the Toyota Probox is actually this is a Succeed. It is a very practical van, because you have let me say, a decent amount of boot space to carry your luggage or goods for delivery. But then you can actually make this van more practical. You do that by lowering the second row seat. You just flick it here. Now when the second row seat is lowered, you can see it is folding very flat. It folds actually flat to the floor. That's why the bench-like shape is actually very important for this car. When the second row seats are folded flat, you can see it's a very practical van, and that's why actually this car is going to put a smile on your face if you want something that is gonna carry your luggage or goods without any problem. Another thing I've liked about this car is because of this material. This material is actually pretty hard, and it will actually, let me say, when you're putting your luggage in this car, the strength of this material allows you, protects the car, actually the flow of this car. So that is actually another thing that makes this car a good one, especially when it comes to carrying cargo. The biggest problem with the Toyota Probox currently is the price tag. Actually, most of the dealers are selling at 1.2, which is actually on the higher side. So that one, it may actually push people to vans like the Nissan NV200, which is slightly bigger. But then you can never go wrong with a Toyota Probox, especially when you have a 1NZ FV engine under the hood. The reason I'm saying the Toyota Probox is actually a very simple car to live with, it's because I'm looking even at the availability of spare parts. The Probox actually shares most of its mechanical components with other cars in the Toyota family, so you'll not struggle that much, especially when you are purchasing spare parts for this car. Of course, when you are in business, you want a car that won't stall for more than 1 day before you get its parts. So this is a car actually that is popular everywhere, so you'll not be struggling any much. Even if you are in the most remote part of the country, most probably you are going to find the spare parts for this Toyota Probox, and actually that is one of its biggest strengths. Now, away from the comfort and zero technology here, that is a bland interior that is not inspiring. This one is a weakness that it's not tied to this car. The Toyota Probox reputation nowadays, especially with the men in blue, may not be that good. That means you should always be ready to be stopped at every police block when you're having a Toyota Probox, regardless whether you have a private tag here. Because the Toyota Probox, actually, the reputation it has, it's like it's a business car that is used to ferry all things, that is bad and good things. So you should always be ready when purchasing this car that you're gonna be stopped at every roadblock. But then, if you're purchasing this car to use it as a private for private use, I'll advise that you look elsewhere, because most probably you may not like that inconveniences. But if low ownership costs are something that is you are considering, that is not a serious reason, of course. That is not a deal breaker to avoid going for this Toyota Probox. So the Toyota Probox is actually a very dependable van. It has tried and tested credentials as a workhorse, because literally this car is a turning point of the Kenyan, turning point in Kenya. Most of them are actually pretty reliable. The only weak link for this new shape Toyota Success Probox is the transmission, because it's a CVT. The previous one used to come with a 4-speed automatic transmission. So it's a fuel efficient car. Let me say it's also reliable, because for this new shape, of course, even if they are coming with a CVT, there are not many complaints that have been registered. But then time will tell whether it will stand the abuse, just like the traditional one. Of course, if comfort is your priority, you better look elsewhere, because if you are not a driver or the co-driver here, the second row seat is not going to be comfortable for you, especially over long distances. But then you can still purchase it and remove that seat, swipe it with a more comfortable one. So I guess you've now known more about this 2014 or 2015 Toyota Succeed, and it can also apply to the Toyota Probox. It's only that the engine is quite different here. Alright guys, see you on the next one.